Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a little experiment. I'm going to throw a single word out into the ether, and I want you, the listener, to just freeze frame the very first micro reaction your brain has. Don't filter it, don't overthink it, just catch that initial reflex. Ready? Libido.
Whew. Yeah, that is a heavy one.
It is, isn't it?
Huh.
I feel like for most people, that word triggers one of maybe three things immediately.
Right.
You get the nervous giggles like you're suddenly back in middle school health class.
Oh, yep, I can feel that one.
Or you get this immediate visceral discomfort, like a wall goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and this is the third one, you get this sort of clinical boredom, like we're about to read a dusty medical textbook from, I don't know, 1975.
It definitely feels like a word that belongs in like a bad advice column or a therapist's office. It's got a lot of baggage. It doesn't feel like a word for a normal conversation.
Exactly. It feels awkward.
Yeah.
But we've been coming through this massive stack of research you've pulled together. And I mean, it's everything. Biological papers, evolutionary psychology, history, even internet sociology. And the mission today is to strip away that awkwardness. We're going to look at the machinery under the hood.
We have to, because if you actually look at the sources, libido isn't just about what happens in the bedroom. I mean, that's arguably the smallest part of the story.
That's a huge claim.
It is. But the research backs it up. It's about life energy. It's a signal system for your entire body. And it's a lens for understanding how we survive in a world that is increasingly loud, capitalist, and, frankly, steeped in irony.
Life energy. That raises the stakes immediately. So the goal today is to move way, way beyond that simple sex drive definition. We're going to talk about the biology of dopamine, the history of why we feel shame, and we're even going to get into modern internet slang terms like gooner or down bad and why we use them to, protect ourselves.
And we should probably set the ground rules right up front. This is a deep dive focus on literacy, not exposure.
That was a key distinction the sources made. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. It's a critical frame for this whole conversation. We are keeping this PG-13, and that's not because we are prudish, and it's not because we're afraid of the topic, but the research argues that real maturity is about understanding patterns in human nature, not just confession or titillation.
So we're trying to understand how the machine works. We aren't just here to stare at the sparks it makes.
Beautifully put, yes. It's about developing a language for an experience, not just describing the experience itself. Literacy, not exposure.
Literacy, not exposure. I think that's going to be our mantra. So let's get into the literacy part. And we have to start with definitions because I have to be honest, the first 5 pages of the reading completely blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I realized I had been using 3 different words to mean the exact same thing for my entire life. And apparently that is a recipe for disaster.
It's the classic error. It is hands down the most common thing I see in the literature and just in, how people talk about this. We tend to take libido, arousal, and horniness, and we collapse them into one big, messy bucket.
We just call it sex drive.
Exactly. And when you treat them as synonyms, you end up with a lot of confusion and usually a lot of shame. Because you might have one of those systems functioning perfectly and another one totally offline, but you just think the whole thing is broken. You think you're broken.
Okay, so let's break them apart. The source material, using this incredible metaphor that I think fixes the confusion instantly. It compares these 3 things to the weather. Walk us through that.
Right. This is the best way to visualize it.
Oh.
So first, you have libido. I want you to think of libido as the climate.
The climate. Okay, so that's the big picture context, the overall pattern.
Exactly. The climate is the background level. It's the trend over time. It's slow moving. It's tied to your identity, your health, your life stage. It answers the question, how often do I generally want connection or intimacy?
It's not about right now, it's about the in general.
Precisely. It doesn't change day to day, usually. If you live in a tropical climate, it's generally warm and humid. If you live in the Arctic, it's generally cold and dry. That's your baseline. Your libido is your personal climate.
Okay, so libido is the baseline setting. It's who you are over a long stretch. Then you have arousal.
Arousal is the weather.
The weather, which changes fast. 1 minute it's sunny, the next is hailing.
Right. The weather is what is happening right now, in this specific moment. It's physiological, it's mechanical. Is there blood flow? Is there sensitivity? Is the nervous system responding to stimuli? That is the weather.
And here's the part that really clicked for me. The crucial distinction that people miss is that you can have weather that doesn't match the climate.
That is the whole ball game right there. You just nailed it.
Right, break that down. Because I think that's where all the confusion and shame comes from. You're saying the body can do something the self isn't planning on.
Think about it. You can be in a low libido climate, meaning generally you aren't walking around seeking out intimacy. Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're grieving, maybe you're just in a quiet phase of life. Your climate is cool. But you can still experience a moment of arousal weather
Mm.
because of a specific stimulus.
Like a warm breeze blowing through a cold climate.
A perfect analogy, a specific touch, a scene in a movie, even just friction from your clothes can create a physiological response. Your body's weather can be sunny for a moment, even if your overall climate is cold.
So your body can mechanically respond even if your climate, your general self, isn't interested.
Precisely. And this is so important, vice versa. You can have a high libido climate. You generally love intimacy. You value it. You seek it out. But the weather today is just flat. It's raining. Nothing is working mechanically.
Like you're tired or you ate a huge meal.
Or you're distracted by a work email. The climate is there. Your desire for connection is real. But the weather just isn't cooperating. The mechanical systems are offline.
That separates the biology from the identity. I like that. But then there's the third one, which the sources describe as the most chaotic of the bunch. Horniness.
Horniness is the storm.
It's a storm.
It's the specific, conscious urge for release right now. It's often pressure-based. It feels urgent, like a thunderstorm rolling in fast. And the sources point out that the storm is often driven by things that aren't even sexual in nature.
That was the surprising part. We assume horniness means I am attracted to someone. That's the story we tell ourselves.
Not necessarily. It can be driven by boredom. Your brain is understimulated and it's screaming for a dopamine hit. It can be driven by stress.
So if I'm stressed about a deadline and I suddenly feel that urge, it's not because I'm suddenly in love with my spreadsheet. It's because my brain wants a sedative.
Exactly. It wants the opioids and dopamine that come with release to lower your cortisol. It's an act of self-regulation. You're self-medicating. It's your body screaming, I need a neurological reset, and I need it now, and I know a quick way to get it.
It's looking for regulation, not necessarily connection. I think this distinction is so helpful because, well, think about how often people sit there and think, why am I not in the mood? And they spiral. They think they're broken or their relationship is broken.
Right, they pathologize it.
But if you use this framework, you can diagnose it better. You can actually get curious instead of judgmental.
Exactly. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me? You ask, is this a climate issue? Am I in a season of life where my baseline is low? Or is this a weather issue? Is my body just not responding right now because I'm tired? Or is this a storm issue? Am I just feeling an urge for release because I'm bored or stressed? They are driven by completely different biological systems, so they need different solutions.
Let's get into that biology a bit more, because I think in layman's terms, we just assume it's all hormones, right?
Yeah.
Just testosterone and estrogen doing some kind of dance.
It's the go-to explanation, yeah. Oh, my hormones are out of whack.
But the sources break it down into two distinct brain systems that are much more useful. They call them the seek system and the respond system.
Yeah. Yes. This is the neurological difference between libido and arousal. Libido is the seek system.
Yeah.
It is driven largely by dopamine.
Dopamine is the craving chemical, the motivation molecule.
It's the molecule of wanting. It's the molecule of anticipation. It's what gets you off the couch to go find food or water or a mate. Testosterone fuels the intensity of that seek system. It's like the gasoline. So libido is the engine that makes you go explore the world. It's looking for something it doesn't have yet. It's fundamentally about curiosity and drive.
Okay, so libido is go get it. It's the forward-moving energy.
Correct. Arousal, on the other hand, is the respond system. That is driven by the parasympathetic nervous system. It's your rest and digest system, but also your rest and connect system. It's mechanical. It's the body's reflex to friction or visual stimuli, or even in some cases, stress. And this is a massive point for understanding consent.
The sources were very, very clear on this, and I want to make sure we don't gloss over it.
It's critical. Arousal can happen without desire. The respond system can activate even when the seek system is completely switched off.
Which is terrifying if you don't understand it. You might think your body is betraying you, or that you must have liked it on some level, which is a common and damaging myth in cases of assault.
Exactly. It's a purely physiological evolutionary mechanism. The body is designed to be responsive as a fail-safe to ensure reproduction happens even in less than ideal circumstances for the species. But we, in our modern world, we often interpret that bodily response as intent. We think, oh, my body reacted, so I must have wanted it.
And the sources say that is a dangerous fallacy, a deeply dangerous one.
It is. Physical response does not equal wanting. The weather is not the climate. That distinction alone, that the body can respond mechanically even if the person doesn't want it, that clears up so much confusion and pain around trauma and consent.
So if libido is this seek system,
Mm-hmm.
why do we even have it? I mean, obviously the simple answer is babies, procreation. But the source has made this really bold claim that evolution doesn't actually care about your happiness.
It really doesn't. Not one bit. Evolution cares about one thing: continuation, genetic continuation. And if libido were only about making babies, think about how inefficient it is to have it all the time.
What do you mean?
Well, it would turn off the second you were infertile. It would turn off when you were already pregnant. It would turn off when you were too old to reproduce. It would be a very targeted on-off switch.
Right, but it sticks around. People in their 70s and 80s have libido. Pregnant women often have a huge surge in libido. So what function is it serving if not just reproduction?
It serves at least 4 pillars, according to the research. Yes, reproduction is number 1, but the others are just as important for the survival of a social species like ours. Number 2 is pair bonding.
Keeping two people together.
Long enough to raise a child, which takes a very, very long time for humans compared to other mammals. Sex creates oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It's the glue. Pillar 3 is social cohesion. In our primate ancestors, it was a way to reduce aggression within a group, to build alliances. And the big one, pillar 4, is motivation and exploration.
Motivation. I don't connect libido with, wanting to do my taxes.
No, not that kind of motivation. Think about it. Libido is a motivational engine. It keeps an organism engaging with the world. It pushes you to go out, meet others, take risks, show off your skills, be creative. If you had zero drive to connect with anything or anyone, you might just sit in a cave and conserve energy until you died.
You wouldn't innovate. You wouldn't explore.
Exactly. Libido is the energy that says, go participate in life, go see what's over that hill, go try that new thing. It's the engine of novelty.
That's a beautiful reframe. It's not just sex drive. It's life drive.
Freud called it eros, the life force, the drive toward creation and connection, opposed to thanatos, the death drive. And biologically, that holds up. It's the system that pushes us toward novelty and away from stagnation.
Talking about novelty, let's look at the timeline of life. Because the way this energy shows up changes drastically as we age. And the sources paint a really funny and also slightly tragic picture of puberty.
Oh, puberty, the great evolutionary mismatch.
It feels like a design flaw, surely. I mean, why would you give a teenager that much energy with that little sense?
Well, statistically, if you look at the timeline, puberty, that 10 to 15-year-old range, is characterized by a massive, and I mean massive, hormonal surge. You have adult levels of drive booting up. But the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles emotional regulation, consequence analysis, the brakes, is nowhere near finished developing. It's still under construction.
So you have a Ferrari engine in a go-kart with no brakes. That's the classic analogy.
It is, and the sources suggest this might be an intentional evolutionary feature, not a flaw.
Intentional. How on earth does that help us? It seems like it just causes chaos.
Think about the social risk of approaching a potential mate for the very first time. It's terrifying. Rejection is socially lethal in a small tribe or even in a high school cafeteria.
Feels like the end of the world, yeah.
So if you had a fully developed adult-level risk assessment at 15, you might never approach anyone. You'd think through all the ways it could go wrong, and you'd just talk yourself out of it. You need a delusional amount of drive, an almost chemical intoxication, to overcome the terrifying prospect of awkwardness.
That actually makes so much sense. You have to be literally chemically high to get through the horror of asking your first crush to the dance.
You do. Then you move into the late teens and early 20s. This is peak biological novelty seeking. This is the highest drive versus consequence imbalance you'll likely ever have. You are wired to explore, to make mistakes, to travel, to try new things, to find out what works and what doesn't.
And then, hopefully, the stabilization hits.
Usually in the mid-20s to 30s, the prefrontal cortex finally comes fully online. The sources call this the shift to meaning-based desire. The raw dopamine spikes of newness start to wear off a little, and the oxytocin systems of bonding and familiarity start to take over more. You start caring more about who you are with, rather than just the act or the novelty itself.
And then the 30s and 40s. That section in the research seemed a bit more choose your own adventure.
It's highly individual, and this is where environment plays a huge role. For some, this is where stress, parenting, career pressure, all of that just crushes the libido. The climate gets cold because the environment is hostile. Remember, libido is safety sensitive.
Right. The brain says, not a safe time.
But for others, and this was often mentioned in the literature on female timelines, the 30s and 40s can bring a rise, a second peak.
Why is that? I would have thought aging means less drive, biologically speaking.
It's not just biology, it's psychology.
Yeah.
Confidence, autonomy. You know who you are, you know what you want, you care less about what others think. That psychological safety can unlock the libido in a way that the deep insecurity of the 20s might have suppressed.
I want to touch on the male versus female trends, because the sources are very, very careful here. They mention the general pattern, but then immediately slap a giant warning label on it.
The warning label is crucial. We have to avoid stereotypes here because they cause real harm. The general pattern, and again, this is a statistical average, not a rule for individuals, is that male bodies tend toward spontaneous desire.
It just happens. It pops up out of nowhere, seemingly unprompted.
Right. And female bodies tend toward contextual or responsive desire, meaning the desire often shows up after the stimulation starts or after the emotional connection feels safe and present. The desire responds to context rather than just appearing.
But the caveat is the most important part.
The caveat is that the variation within a sex is larger than the variation between the sexes.
Say that again? That sounds like a vital statistic that everyone should have tattooed on their brain.
The difference between two random men is likely bigger than the difference between the average man and the average woman. There are millions of men with responsive desire who think they are broken because they aren't ready to go 24/7 like the stereotype says. And there are millions of women with spontaneous desire who think they are too much or unfeminine. The stereotypes are cages.
It really comes down to what the sources call the individual cocktail, your personal libido recipe. They list factors like testosterone sensitivity.
Right, not just how much you have, but how sensitive your receptors are to it.
Attachment style.
Huge. Anxious attachment styles can lead to huge spikes and crashes in libido, using it for reassurance. Secure attachment tends to be more steady.
And something they call novelty sensitivity.
Oh, that's a big one. Some people's dopamine systems just light up like a Christmas tree for newness. These are the people who have intense, fiery starts to relationships that then burn out quickly once the novelty fades. Others have systems that light up for familiarity and safety. Neither is better, they're just different engines.
And stress. We have to talk about stress because it came up again and again.
It is the ultimate libido killer. And it's not just because you're too busy or too tired, though that's part of it. It's because libido detects safety. On a deep primal level, if your body is pumping cortisol because you're worried about rent or a sick parent or a looming deadline, your ancient brain says, now is not a safe time to bring a child into the world or be vulnerable with another creature.
It's a feature, not a bug. It's trying to protect you.
It is protecting you. It's conserving resources for the crisis. The problem is, modern life is a chronic, low-grade crisis for many people.
That leads perfectly into this idea of health. Because we live in a culture that constantly tells us we should be having more sex, better sex, wilder sex. If you aren't swinging from the chandeliers 3 times a week, you're boring or dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But the sources take a sledgehammer to that idea.
They really do. The consensus from the sources is that health is about fit, flexibility, and lack of distress. It is not about quantity.
So a low libido can be healthy.
Absolutely. A high libido can be healthy, a fluctuating libido can be healthy, an absent libido can be healthy. The only time it becomes unhealthy is if it is causing you distress, like, I want to feel this desire, but I can't. Or if it's causing a loss of agency, like a compulsion you can't control. It's about the suffering it causes, not the number on the scoreboard.
This brings us to the asexual spectrum. This is a really, really enlightening part of the research for me. I think there is a huge misconception that asexuality means broken hormones, or that it's a phase.
Right, or that it's a medical condition to be fixed. The sources are clear. Asexuality is an orientation. It's a valid configuration of the human operating system. It means experiencing little or no sexual attraction to others. Full stop.
But the nuance is that they can still have libido. That seems contradictory.
Only if you're using our old collapsed definition. Remember our new ones. They can have libido, as in undirected life energy, a drive to create or connect in non-sexual ways. They can have arousal. The mechanical weather system can still work. They just don't have the vector, the arrow of sexual attraction pointing that energy at a specific person.
So an asexual person might enjoy romance. They might even masturbate because the mechanical system works and feels good. But
Yeah.
they don't look at someone and feel that specific pull or seek drive.
Exactly. There is a configuration called asexual plus romantic where the person wants debonding, cuddling, a life partnership, just not the sexual act. And realizing that the machinery isn't broken, it's just wired for a different output, is massive for self-acceptance. It's not a bug, it's a different operating system.
And for the people who identify as low libido but not asexual, the people who are stressed about their lack of drive, the sources say the anxiety is often the problem, not the libido itself.
100%. If your libido shuts down because you are exhausted from working 2 jobs and raising kids, it is doing its job perfectly. It's saying, conserve energy, survive. The problem arises when we layer shame on top of that. We think, I should want this, and that should, creates a pressure cooker that pushes desire even further away. You can't shame yourself into wanting something.
So if we've established that biology is this complex individual cocktail, how do we get to a point where we are so weird about it? Why is there so much cultural and historical baggage?
Okay, so now we have to zoom out from the individual brain and body to, well, to history. Because believe it or not, we weren't always this neurotic about it.
The sources mention the pre-agricultural era, hunter-gatherer societies.
Right. Before we settled down and started farming, the sources suggest that sex was much more integrated into the rhythm of life. It was often ritualized. Sure, there were taboos, don't sleep with your siblings, don't disrupt the harmony of the tribe, but it wasn't shameful in the deep moral sense we think of today. It was practical.
Then came the fence.
The fence changed everything. Agriculture. As soon as you have a plot of land and you want to pass that land down to your children, you suddenly need to know with 100% certainty that those children are biologically yours.
Paternity certainty became cash. It became the foundation of property and inheritance.
Exactly. And at that moment, women's sexuality in particular was reframed from a life force into a risk factor. It became a form of property that had to be regulated and controlled. You can't have spontaneous desire messing up the inheritance lines. That's a direct threat to the new economic order.
Yeah, and then religion enters the chat. But the sources have a really nuanced take here. It's not just religion hates fun. It describes shame as social technology.
It's a brilliant reframing. Shame is incredibly efficient. Think about it. You can't have a police officer on every corner watching everyone's behavior, but if you can install a police officer inside someone's head, that's shame. It regulates behavior 24/7 without any external enforcement.
So in many Abrahamic traditions, for example, desire was framed as a lock of control, a betrayal of the soul.
Right. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It created this deep duality. The mind is good, pure, close to God. The body is dangerous, animalistic, a source of temptation. And we are still living with the hangover of that split. We still talk about guilty pleasures.
And then there's the family paradox. I read this part and I just stop and stare at the wall for a minute. You exist because your parents had sex, but the family is the one place you absolutely cannot discuss it.
It creates a foundational loop of silence. The very origin of your life is the one topic that is taboo at the dinner table. It teaches us from age 0 that this fundamental part of us belongs in the shadows. It separates our origins from our identities in a really profound way.
And historically, the fear driving all this control was justified, right? This wasn't just abstract moralizing.
Oh, absolutely. We forget this in the modern era of antibiotics and reliable birth control. For most of human history, libido carried massive, life-altering risks. An unwanted pregnancy could kill you. A sexually transmitted disease like syphilis was a death sentence. Social ruin could lead to starvation. Fear plus libido equals control. We had to control it because the stakes were life and death.
But now, modernity. We have the pill, we have penicillin, the physical risks are lower than ever, but the shame seems to have mutated, not disappeared.
Because now we have what the sources call the visibility trap. We went from a world of rare stimulation, where maybe you saw an ankle and it was a big deal, to a world of abundant, infinite stimulation. The printing press led to pornography, which led to the internet. But our moral software hasn't updated at the same pace.
And this leads us directly to the weirdest relationship of all, libido and capitalism. Because I always thought the saying sex sells meant that capitalism loves libido.
Capitalism loves frustrated libido. It loves desire that is stimulated but never fully satisfied.
Okay, unpack that. That sounds counterintuitive.
Capitalism doesn't want you to be content. Satisfaction stops the consumption cycle. Capitalism wants you stimulated. It wants you to see the beer commercial or the car ad or the perfume ad and feel a spike of desire, a promise of a better life. But it doesn't want you to actually resolve that desire fully because then you stop buying things. It needs you to stay in a state of low-grade wanting.
So it uses suggestion, the hook, the promise, but not the fulfillment.
Precisely. But here's the catch. Capitalism also hates libido when it hurts productivity. That's where we get the concept of NSFW, not safe for work.
Which I always thought was about morality. Like, don't look at that, it's bad. It's a moral judgment.
The sources argue it's not about morality at all. It's about output. NSFW was invented to separate the worker self from the private self. You can't be entering a high arousal state when you're supposed to be filing spreadsheets or operating machinery. It's an efficiency metric, not a moral one. It's about protecting ad revenue and worker focus.
That brings us to the internet, the ultimate amplifier of all these contradictions. The sources talk about a specific modern phenomenon, and we have to use the slang here to really get it. Gooning.
Right, we're deep in the internet sociology now. This is where it gets very contemporary.
For the uninitiated, gooning is recent slang for excessive indulgence, usually in pornography addiction contexts, where you lose control, kind of zoning out for hours. But the sources point out something fascinating. This is not new behavior.
Not at all. We've had libertines, lechers, wastrels, debauchees for centuries.
Right.
The behavior losing yourself completely to appetite is ancient.
So what's new about the gooner?
The irony.
The irony. Explain that.
The term gooner is used almost as a self-own. It's a mock identity. You see people online saying, I'm cooked, I'm such a gooner. It blends the shame, the humor, and the identity into one single package. It's a way of saying, I know this is pathetic, and I'm going to beat you to the punchline by owning it first.
That is the defining trait of our generation, isn't it? I'm going to roast myself before you can roast me. It's preemptive self-deprecation.
It's a defense mechanism against what the sources call the visibility trap. The internet makes every niche desire, foot fetishes, you name it, visible. And because they are visible, they get named. And because they get named, the algorithm finds other people like you and clusters you together into a community. And then, once you're a visible group, the moral commentary starts.
So it feels like everyone is a pervert now because we can see everyone's search history, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. We aren't necessarily more depraved than the Victorians. We are just more indexed, more labeled, and more exposed. And that exposure creates what the sources call a double bind.
The double bind.
The internet says two things at once. First, it says, here is exactly what you want. We have an algorithm that knows your deepest, darkest desires better than you do. Click here for an infinite supply. And then the same internet, often on a different tab, says, look at this freak. Look at how cringe this is. Can you believe people are into this?
It serves you the meal and then mocks you for eating it.
And that psychologically intensifies the desire because taboo acts as an accelerant, the forbidden fruit effect. If something is forbidden or shameful, the brain often craves it more. The shame cycle actually feeds the dopamine cycle in a very twisted loop.
This brings us to the coping mechanism of choice for this entire generation, irony. The sources talk about irony as armor, phrases we use all the time like, I'm down bad, or it's not that deep, or not gonna lie.
It's all about plausible deniability. If I express desire sincerely, I really like you, and you reject me or call me creepy, I am destroyed. The shame is overwhelming. But if I express desire ironically, haha, I'm so down bad for this person, I'm cooked, and you judge me, I can just say, relax, I was joking. It's not that deep.
It's a social airbag. It protects you from the impact of sincerity.
A perfect term for it. But is it healthy?
That's the question, isn't it?
Short term. It saves you from shame. It's an effective shield. Long term. The sources are pretty clear that it blocks intimacy. You train yourself to dissociate from your own feelings. You become a sarcastic commentator on your life, not a participant in it. You can't build a real connection from behind an iron wall of irony.
So why are we so afraid of sincerity? Why does it feel so risky to just say, I desire this or I want this?
Because we live in a surveillance culture. Everything is screenshotable. Context collapses. If you are sincere and that sincere text message or comment is taken out of context 5 years from now, you can be labeled creepy or problematic instantly.
And those labels stick. They can cost you your job, your reputation.
They do. Desire now intersects with politics and gender discourse in a way it never has before. The stakes feel existential. Saying the wrong thing doesn't just feel like a faux pas, it feels like a threat to your social survival. So in that environment, sincerity is dangerous. Irony is safe.
So how do we get out of this trap? How do we move toward what the sources call sexual maturity? because they're very clear. Maturity is not about having a high body count. It's not about being performatively sex positive and talking about it all the time.
No, that can be just another form of performance. The sources argue that maturity is about integration.
Integration. What does that mean?
It's the ability to acknowledge a desire, to feel it fully in your body without being ruled by it. It's the capacity to hold the feeling and say, I feel this, but I don't have to act on it. It's creating a space between impulse and action.
That seems like a lost art. We feel like if we have an urge, we either have to suppress it and hate ourselves for having it or indulge it immediately without thinking.
The middle path is, I see this feeling, it is mine, it is a signal from my body, I'm going to listen to it, but I get to choose what I do with it.
Yeah.
That's real power.
The sources also talk about responsibility, owning the feeling without outsourcing it.
This is so crucial for boundaries. Immature libido says, you made me feel this, so you are responsible for fixing it. You have to either satisfy me or deal with my anger. Mature libido says, I feel this desire in response to you. This is my internal weather. I am responsible for managing it. It takes the pressure off the other person.
And the third piece was validation.
Not using libido to regulate your self-worth. If someone rejects you, it hurts. That's human. But for an immature psyche, rejection feels like annihilation. It means I am worthless because they don't want me. Mature libido separates the two. They don't want me, and that's okay. It doesn't change my inherent worth.
I love the practical strategy the sources suggest for handling all this in the modern world. They call it the PG-13 strategy.
Yes, and they argue that keeping the conversation PG-13 like we are trying to do right now in this deep dive is actually a power move. It's not a sign of weakness or prudishness.
How so? I usually think of PG-13 as censorship or holding back.
Think of it as containment. If you go rated R, if you get graphic and explicit, you trigger people's defenses, you trigger their shame, or you trigger their arousal. And in both cases, the thinking, analytical part of the brain tends to turn off. But if you keep it PG-13, you create psychological safety. You allow for literacy without exposure. You can analyze the machinery without getting your fingers caught in the gears.
It's the rule of thumb they mentioned. If the primary point of the sentence is to create arousal, it probably belongs in a private context. If the point is to create understanding, it belongs in a public one.
That simple rule could save so many awkward conversations. It creates a framework for talking about this stuff with partners or even with your kids in a way that feels safe and productive instead of threatening.
The sources also mention outlets for this energy. Because this life force, this eros, it has to go somewhere. If you aren't acting on it, and you aren't suppressing it into a shadow, what do you do with it?
You transmute it, you sublime it, you turn it into symbols. This is what artists have been doing for centuries. Art, creativity, writing, music, building a business, starting a movement. These are all ways to let that raw libidinal energy move through you and into the world without needing another person or crossing a physical boundary.
It's externalizing the libido, giving it a job to do.
Exactly. And on a personal level, journaling is huge here. Processing it privately so you aren't performing it publicly, writing it down takes the charge out of it. It moves it from a compulsion in your body to an object you can look at on a page.
As we wrap this up, I want to circle back to the listener, because we've covered a ton. Biology, history, the internet, irony. What is the single biggest takeaway for someone listening to this and trying to make sense of their own experience?
The biggest nuanced check from all the sources is this. Libido is not identity.
Don't say, this is who I am.
Say, this is what I experience. That little bit of distance gives you all the control in the world. It stops you from labeling yourself as broken or addicted or frigid. Those are identities. I am experiencing a period of low libido is an observation. You can work with an observation. It's much harder to change an identity.
And for the final provocative thought, the sources leave us with a really simple but profound idea.
We treat libido like a problem to be solved, a puzzle to figure out, or a sin to be confessed. We're always trying to fix it or increase it or decrease it. But what if it's just something to relate to?
Relate to it, like a friend.
Or like a signal on your car's dashboard. When a light on your dashboard blinks, you don't get mad at it and smash the dashboard. You get curious. You check the engine. Libido is just a signal. Sometimes it signals a need for connection. Sometimes it signals stress. Sometimes it signals boredom. Sometimes it signals safety.
So the question isn't, how do I fix it?
The question is, what is it trying to tell me? When you notice it and you name it and you get curious about it, it often stops screaming for attention. It's just information. It's just your body talking to you.
That is surprisingly comforting. It takes all the pressure off.
It should. It's just weather. And you don't have to control the weather. You just have to learn how to dress for it.
I love that. Dress for the weather, people. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.